Here we are, bottom of the Smash Mountain. I would like to thank my Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/bsmpod for continuing to support me in what I'm doing. Especially big shout outs to my senior producers. We have my mom and dad. Love y'all. We have Ventus Official, friend of the program. We'll talk about that in a second, I'm sure. And lastly, PK Smokey with the Eternal Project. So shout outs. This is very, very special because, as some of you may know, this is episode 200 of Bottom of the Smash Mountain, and the two people who are with me for this episode, I'm very privileged to have JD and Wassabi, who are in a way doing a little mini reunion tonight with the Wannabes Podcast, just a little bit, but I'm saying that the Wannabes Podcast, JD and Wassabi specifically, inspired me to start this, and 200 episodes later, I don't mention y'all in every single episode, but anytime anybody asks, it's you guys, a little bit of Alston Melee mixed in there as well. But I still remember the messages I shared in your Discord, in the Wannabes Discord. I said, I want to do something. And I think it was Wassabi who said, yeah, go for it. And I was like, yes, this person randomly from New York said to go for it. I'm going to do it. So both of you have been very supportive of me, and I really appreciate it. And so thank you for joining me for episode 200. I'll start with one of you so that you don't trip over each other. You're so excited to record again, I'm sure. JD, I'll start with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be here. I think kind of having a catalyst like this is especially important for kind of shaking the rust off and getting some momentum and getting in the front of the microphone again. It's one of those things where when Will and I were really on the groove, we always kind of talked about how the podcast was sort of like, in a way, going to the gym, where before it, you don't always want to go. And then afterwards, you're always so happy about having done it. And so I think just getting a refresher of just catching up with Will is a huge part of it. Catching with you, Jesse, as well, is really exciting. But it's really great to be back in a podcast setting and talking about Melee, but talking about life, and I'm here for it, man. And congrats on 200 episodes. Huge accomplishment. Really well done. You've done so much work. You've really taken it upon yourself to make those interviews. Don't just let's just say they're mostly outbound. If we're talking sales lingo, it's a lot of hard work that goes into that, and I understand. So good stuff to you. Congrats on 200, and I'm excited to be here.
Wassabi, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah. First of all, congrats on 200. That's really amazing to hear. And honestly, I'm just super excited to catch up with both of you. I mean, it's been a minute since, any of us really talked outside of like some quick check-ins here and there. So yeah, let's just get right into it. I'm really excited to talk and catch up with both of you. Oh my gosh.
Do we talk about the fact that you're coming back to New York City for a little while in 2 weeks? Or do we talk about what happened in the past year? I'm just like, I only saw that tweet maybe about 45 minutes ago. Wasabi's coming back to New York City. Let's go.
This is breaking news. I've been off Twitter.
Tag you. Yeah. So this is just kind of confirmed, like, because I am going to be in the East Coast for like 2 back-to-back weekend weddings. So I'm going to spend a very, very brief time in New York. So I'll be going to the nightclub on the 21st. I was talking with Dark Janix about it. And so I just, put it on Twitter, and be like, hey, all the New York homies, like, let's catch up that one night.
I guess I'm there too. I mean,
let's go.
Come on.
Let's go. Yeah, I tagged you, but yeah, I figured I'd let you know also on the podcast in case you didn't see it.
Well, I forgot my Twitter credentials, so since I got my new phone, I've been a desktop Twitter only, and God knows that is not a habit that I'm ready to pick up on. So it's not you. It's my bad memory. Dude, that's so exciting. I can't wait.
I'm so excited as well. It's gonna be sick. I like literally tagged everyone.
You tagged IBDW, JMOOC. You went after every single person in New York, it felt like.
Yeah.
You mean basically Jake and Cody?
Yep.
I'm not on first name basis yet. Y'all still get to have that. It's super cool,
Yep. That's what we got to hold on to what we got, Will. I get to call Wassabi Will, and I get to call Patches Max. All the important get to call Pig Will. You know how it goes.
That's true.
I was thinking about it. We were talking about Ventus Official just briefly at the top. I still don't Half the time I don't even remember his actual name, if I'm being completely honest with you, because I just call him Ventus all the time. I know it's Matt for the record, but I always go because Ventus is super cool, and I always say, do you want me to call you Matt now? He's like, nah, you can just keep saying Ventus, and I'm like, okay. So I just stick with it. I got to interview Dark Gen X over at Pound over that weekend in April, and I was like, okay, cool, this is super fun. He says, you want to go to the VIP area? And I'm like, whoa, the VIP area. So I was like, are we approaching first name territory already? But that's not what was happening. He just needed a drink of water, and he must have felt bad and said, just come with me, as compared to you wait outside. But you know, I'll get there.
He goes, it's Dark Gen X, but you can call me Gen X.
Yes.
Love that for you, J-Dog.
Oh man, whenever I think of about Justin Dark Gen X, like I always think of like the fun idea of like him, like, I don't know, we had a random conversation and it became a running joke of him hosting a tournament on a blimp and call it Blast Zone.
That's a great idea.
That's terrifying.
I love that.
That's absolutely
I know.
scary.
I know.
JD, you actually have been on the mic on and off. I've seen a couple of clips that floated over towards Twitter and a couple of videos that you've uploaded in the past year. So for those who don't know, the Wannabes podcast has been on hiatus for a year now, but since then there's been a couple of things that I've seen on the timeline where JD, you're up there trying to work the crowd a little bit, do some improv, do some looping, you know, using loop pedal, all that fun stuff. So have you tried to make a regular habit out of doing that a couple times a month, or more often, less often? How's that been for you?
Yeah, I've been getting consistent gigs for the first time in my life. Only 2 of them, and this is a huge brag, but 2 of them have been paid, which is huge for me.
Let's go. I mean, that's great.
That's big stuff. So it kind of started back in April. I guess it started back a little over a year ago. I did a couple open mics up in Rockland when I was still living there. And the open mics went well. It was with the looper. It was fully improvised and just kind of did a song in 5 minutes. It probably talked about it on the mic with Will, and it was starting to become really exciting. And I think I was starting a new project too. I was trying to get another podcast that was kind of centered around essentially just everything not Melee, and have it be fully separated and try to do a lot of looping content in the audio space. All the plans went to crap. Hurricane Ida came by, and for a few months I was kind of cast away and figuring out a lot of life stuff and all that. But back in April, one of the people I met at the open mics said he's got this other thing going, his other shows. If you want to send in a little tape and I could show my co-producer, sent something in, they liked it. And so, yeah, it's been going in New Jersey and upstate New York, mostly some random stuff in Manhattan, but it's been consistent. I have a 3-week gap now, which is actually on the longer side than what I'm used to. So this is all very new. It's kind of opened up a new kind of similar. When I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, it's certainly the one thing. It's kind of filled in that competitive, like, long-term growth mindset attitude. And I hope you hand it off to Will for what I've heard, not to take his not to intro what he's doing, but I think we both kind of have these non-Melee grinds, I guess, that seeing any level of early success, that's the stuff that I want to hold on to. And at this moment in time, yeah, a couple times a month is not like big time by any means, but it's big for me.
Ashley, yes, this is a great time to transition into the Wassabi project, something that Doodle Dudester has been waiting since the beginning of this episode to hear, I'm sure, who will be very excited to see this as a general thing on the timeline, by the way. But Wassabi, you've been doing something over there on the West Coast. I want to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So since, we sort of took the hiatus, did a lot of stuff to just sort of take care of myself, but one of the things I picked up on was card collecting, and it started with Pokemon since I had a lot of friends there that did Pokemon, and it quickly moved into soccer because I just, anyone knows, like, I love soccer. And so I started really going hard into that. And, sort of similar to Melee, I found people who lived very close to me around my age that also did it. One guy does it even full time. So, me, his name's Brian, and, a few other people in the area kind of started going to like local shows together, flying to like other like shows like in Dallas and stuff like that. And I started doing like videos for him and helping him with his content. And then lately now we've been ripping packs for people and just kind of trying to run that on Whatnot, which is just this like live auctioning sort of platform. It's like Twitch and eBay, if Twitch and eBay had a child, basically. But it's been really good. It's been really fun to kind of try to do it. I wouldn't say it's like one for one with Melee, because like eventually I do have to like look and stop and be like, I can't spend money on that like anymore because Melee didn't cost me anything really. But it's been really good. I've had some really, really, awesome successes in the last like year of collecting that I've been really proud of, finding some gems and being able to, profit from it to grow my collection.
So I think that the best way to drill into each of the things that y'all have been getting into is to switch back and forth here a little bit. So Wassabi, I'll actually ask you to ask JD a question after I'm done asking JD a question about what he's been doing. So if you want to think of something. So JD, I'm going back to your thing about doing gigs. I think that between getting over, like I think there was a picture that you posted on the timeline at some point of all the damage from that hurricane in 2021. It just looked devastating, but then continuing to turn around and go up on the stage, and we're talking about you doing things like it's comedians type stuff. You have to be able to put all that stuff aside that's happening in personal life, or take care of it and then go back up on the stage. And then for myself, I always feel like I have to be in like ideal circumstances to even try being funny. I guess that might be just like the really basic casual attitude about comedy. But for you, where do you draw from to be funnier or to perform, if that's how you want to look at it?
Dude, I love how you said, I think the words you said were ideal circumstances, and I feel the same way. Honestly, and I think it's because Will's in front of me. I am going to bring it to Melee, and I have no choice.
I mean, this is a Melee podcast.
That's true. That's true.
It was going to happen.
Yeah, might as well just stay on this train. So I think a lot of what I've learned through doing the Wannabes and doing a lot of introspection and talking it out with Will is kind of figuring out my strengths. And one of those strengths is that I'm one of my strengths in relative to other things of myself, not necessarily relative to other people, but I'm a very intuitive person. That's how I learn. That's how I perform. And the more I think, the worse I do. I'm just not a preparer. I'm not a I don't have game plans necessarily. And for better or for worse, that's just what I've found out and have accepted. So the preparing I've done that I can do is to get the past year I've been really into meditation actually, and I've tickled with it over the years, and here and there, and usually it was more of a therapeutic, like when things get stressful I turn to it. And recently I've realized that it's the best foundation I can imagine, especially when it comes to gigs. I've tried a couple shows without it, and the best, it really just comes down to trying to be in the moment. The improv art, because it's all improvised, it's better to have a song be basic and the track be basic, and have the connection with the audience be very real. And that comes from being more centered that day and having kind of my shit taken care of, and not having expectations of what the show is going to be, and having that acceptance be like the instinct of it. And that was similar to Melee. Showing up to tournament day is, if you can only prepare so much, so grinding all night the day before, cramming in your practice is not, to a point, it's almost going to take away from your performance. But waking up, getting a good night's sleep, getting your nutrition, your exercise, your meditation, and kind of having that taken care of leads to a better tournament day performance, and also just makes you happier regardless of how you do. So I feel like that is really the only thing I could do to take away. But then, without getting into it, the whole concept of growth and actually improving, that's a different story. How do I actually get better at it? God only knows.
All right, so then I guess question for me for JD, right?
Uh-huh.
All right. I'm curious. So like a big thing I struggled with when I kind of stopped playing Melee, was sort of the immediate sheer lack of community I had, honestly.
Dude.
And I know. So I'm curious about if you've been able to find that with improv and stuff like that, like if you're a regular at a place, like you see, a lot of people, you maybe even know other comedians now and stuff like that. Cause I feel like that's what sort of kept me in the hobby of collecting cards and stuff like that for so long, even if it isn't one for one, another fighting game or something like that. I would say more of a Wassabi pick. I feel like that was a little bit more left field, and we can talk about that later, but that's my question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge gap, right? And I think coming out of the flood, for 2 months, we had a family house is it in Long Island? I think it's on or in Long Island, and one of them's wrong. Out on the island. And, that's almost doubling the removal from anything going on. And then winter hit. Right. So it was sort of this long period of trying to figure out what am I without the game? What am I without the podcast? And then, a lot of job issues. I actually got laid off back in November. And let's skip past that because it ended up being very good. But yeah, it left a hole. And I think I was kind of unaware, maybe until now even, of what a community leaving you feels like. In a lot of ways, I almost felt like I was, half a step out of the community, before the flood. A lot of what I enjoyed was the community with the Wannabes rather than what the Smash community overall felt like. And that was kind of being removed from that from other circumstances was maybe just kind of cut dry, see a Discord, not going to talk to you for 6 months type of thing. When it comes to the improvisers, yeah, I feel like there's a very close, relationship I have to a new community. There is a competition to it, almost more so than there is to it's almost like, imagine if every tournament was an invitational. That's what it would feel like. That's what it feels like in comedy. Every show, you can't, even open mics. I mean, that's more first come, first serve, but no one gives a crap about open mics. Every show that I'm trying to get booked on, it's a zero-sum game. It's me or someone else, not always me and. So with improv overall, I'm trying to get into more collaborative spaces. It's a bit of a time commitment, and I think starting one of these Mondays, I'm going to try to do musical improv back down in the Pit, which is on 38th Street or something like that. So I'm eyeing it. I'm also collaborating with the man Andrew Rich, who produces that show he pulled me in on, and we're starting to do a 2-person act, teams, if you will. and so having him do stand up and me do a kind of an improvised rap in between, and now we're starting to build out and rehearse some things. So it's all new, but it totally feels the same. Not everything is going to feel the same as improving at Melee or grinding at Melee, but a community is a community and a niche is a niche. And when people get what you're doing and you all care about the same things almost to the same extent, that's a big deal. And I'm glad to have kind of had this moment to really realize how important that is. All right, see you guys later.
No, we have more questions. We could do more questions. Wassabi, do you have any other questions for JD right now?
Let's go to Will.
That was my main one. That was my main one.
I like that though, because the feeling for me seeing both of you take a hiatus from doing Melee stuff, I've came in as you all had already done nearly or was already at 100 podcast episodes at that point. So I'm just like bumbling and going, wow, this is great. And I'm starting to get into everything. I'm in the wide-eyed part of the journey, if you will. And the video that JD made I don't want to say it was for the first 5 days of Melee, but if it was, then you'll have to forgive me for that. But it was you're a Melee veteran which was very, very funny. But that's because you and Wassabi, both of you've both lived that. I've played with the game or around the game and have been involved in the game for years and years, whereas I'm just trying to step into the community. So some of what JD was talking about just now resonated with me, not because of the competitive aspect. There's only so much room on the mic each night and in a crowd and an audience, but that where you have to show up, you have to be consistent, you need to be willing to collaborate, willing to speak up for yourself when necessary. And that's sort of what I've been experiencing. Not that I fight super hard to get big guests or to do big spots on like different streams, that kind of thing. But I know that if I want to get guests on, they don't come to me, I come to them. So we're not on the level of the radio Melees of the world where people want to hop in on the conversation. I still have to invite people in, but it was sad for me at first to see y'all go, but then as I saw each of the things that you were both doing, Wassabi with your cards and other things, and JD with performing, I realized it's just another natural step of living one's life. Melee was a focus of it for both of you for a while, and now it's in the arsenal. It's still something that you both enjoy, but it's a different phase of that relationship now. Would you agree?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Of course. Yeah, I agree.
JD's secretly grinding every night.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, I think it definitely feels, it's so different, I think, being, sort of out of it now as well, like considering how in it we both were in different ways. I think it's really interesting looking back, especially like me looking back at like the competitive side of it and stuff like that. I still definitely really, really miss it, but I think there's like I don't know, I've thought about this a lot, and I feel like I sort of came to this conclusion when I went to this NorCal local, actually, and it was solid, but like it was one of those things where I, funny enough, went to a card show earlier that morning at 8 and then like stayed there until the tournament, which was like 10 minutes away around noon. And I kind of went there and I missed registration, or I mean, I thought I could sign up like checking in, and then it was full, and then it was at this bar, but then the bar wasn't being used because there was like a wedding event or something there, so we were in the kind of the back room. It was so crowded, and I was just not having fun. So like it was a little bit somber, but I took a $70 Uber back just to be like, okay, like I think I'm gonna just head back since there's no setups to play with and it's just crowded, and also there's like everyone's just kind of doing their thing, and I think it just felt very different. So I'm very excited to go to New York, sort of for just to see all my friends again, because like I didn't know, like I'd say like 80% of the people in that room, to be very fair.
Yeah, I was gonna say, since you moved to West Coast during a lot of the pandemic side of all this stuff. I forget exactly when, but then there was winter this past year where Omicron variant was pretty much grounding everybody again. Not completely, you get it, but it must have been a different expectation as compared to something for JD, where even if there are new people at stuff like nightclub or other tournaments around the New Jersey, New York City area, there are people that he knows there. And Wassabi, when you go back to NYC, you have I want to go up there for the nightclub. I just can't, but I really hope that you get a little bit of a nice bracket run, a hero's welcome, that kind of thing. No pressure though. I realize, as I say, I hope you have a good bracket run. That implies that you also need to practice for it. You don't need to if you don't want to.
He will.
I think it'll be fun. I actually don't think I will, but I think it will be fun.
What happened to your box? You were asking about a box, about getting one.
So I was asking about that just because I don't want to. I want to see if I can borrow a friend's instead of having to bring mine across the West Coast and travel. Just because, there's going to be a suit in there already, and bags probably will be pretty full for the trip.
It's a big controller. JD, I don't know if you've actually fiddled with one in your hands, but they are quite big. I have one now, actually, Wassabi. I'm trying to be a box fox.
Oh, let's go. Let's go.
My God.
We're getting there.
Yeah. They're taking over.
I can now sort of remember how to up tilt a little bit faster. It involves, for me, I don't know how else to do it other than the modifier up and then the A button. Wassabi, is there a faster way to do up tilts?
That's how I do it, but Zuppy sometimes buffers it after he jumps and stuff like that. But then you have to remember to do that for a specific situation than all the time.
Yeah. So I thought you were going to say that. I was hoping that there was like a one button option, but that's okay. There are one button options for doing other things on the box. So that's neither here nor there. You really don't think that you'll practice a lot heading into something like that? I think that is both like sort of for people who might say, oh, it's cool that you're here. Wait, when's the last time you played? But I know that for you, that's kind of a big deal since you used to be someone who would go, I'm not going to a tournament without being more prepared, without getting in practice, without grinding tech skill.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this a lot, and I think one is just I've been busy with other things. As I said, I'm helping with one of my friends who does, soccer cards full time with his business, and that's, nice, and making a little bit of money on the side. And then work's been very busy as well, and I've really enjoyed being with the company for like over a year now as a project manager, and I'm starting up a few new projects this week and into next week, so things have just been a little hectic. But I think with the practicing thing, like, it's really interesting because I think about it, and there's a part of me that like misses that. Like, I still am trying to, like, I started going on bike rides and just listening to like YouTube videos and podcasts because I just do miss doing something like physical while listening to things. And so that's been a nice sort of way to recreate it without it being just me solo practicing. But in terms of like feeling prepared and stuff like that, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it's hard to explain, but like when I left Melee, I was in really a great place. Like, I think like you guys knew, and JD and I talked about it. Like I cut ties with my dad and stuff like that, and just was kind of like more focused on taking care of myself since I was like depressed and stuff like that. And it was a scary time, but I think like through it, I've sort of, as much as more times as I am bored right now, I've definitely, and like want sort of more projects, more fun hobbies to do and stuff like that. I definitely have appreciated like slowing down in life. And so, when it comes to Melee and practicing and that sort of thing, I think like part of that came from an insecurity around my self-worth that I've been, thankfully able to, not fix up, but really improve over the last year, sort of as I stopped playing Melee and stuff like that. And so, I'm more excited just to see friends rather than to like perform well in bracket. And, it doesn't mean that I like suck now at the game or anything like that. I'll probably miss ledge dashes or won't go for ledge dashes, but I think it's more of just like knowing more what my priorities are to get out of that specific, nightclub experience. And it's definitely not a bracket run. It's to see all the homies.
I love that. JD, you got something for Wassabi? Any questions come to mind?
Well, I have one very quick question. Are you at least gonna touch the controller a day before? Because not like Wassabi practice. And this is not that I care about your performance, but as a friend, I know that like after you have a taste of that competition, I think you're going to be like, all right, I could have put like 20 minutes in. You know what I mean? Like the difference between nothing and a little is like huge. So you're going to at least touch the controller?
Yeah, I'll probably move around and stuff. And,
De-rust, not grind.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll move around. I wouldn't say like that's like necessarily practicing. Just kind of, you know, checking to see everything works, checking to see like what I can do, what I can't do, and then kind of just rolling up with like, okay, okay, like this is what I can bring to the table right now.
Yeah, Wassabi's like, I'll just do a button check, and then cut to 3 a.m. Just like there's like bottles of pee next to him, and
yes,
it's exactly. Like, oh my god, I've been pent up. That was a reference to, I don't know if you guys have Paramount Plus, the mockumentary Players. Check it out. It's a fake League of Legends documentary.
Oh, really?
Really funny, dude. Every gamer in the world should watch it. It's so good.
Okay, I gotta check that out.
So my real question, kind of like, you know, we've taken this time to think about the past year and maybe a little bit beyond that. And if you were to think about the motivation in that, I guess the peak of your practice, maybe that was a couple months into the box, maybe right when you got the box, but there was a point where you were, you know, really putting the time in, really taking the effort and seeing considerable gains. As someone who saw it in real time, the gains were real. How could you kind of deconstruct the motivation of that? You mentioned a little bit that it wasn't the ideal like reasoning for doing it, but I'm curious what parts of that journey were, you know, with this time separated, like what caused you to kind of put that time in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing, like, obviously, is just the familiarity of it. Like, you know, having done it for, you know, the last 6 years of my life, there's, you know, still very much like a comfort to going back to it at times, I think, like that. I think it's just that, like, being on the West Coast with more net play, and then, you know, there are definitely some homies, like, shout out to, like, Nathan Sandwich and Umar and all of that here, you know, and Phil and Waff, but like outside of that, like it was like when I played Melee, it was like strictly for business, you know, rather than like this nice duality of like, oh, I get to also like catch up with friends and stuff like that, like, you know. But looking back at sort of the peak, I sort of really saw it as like sort of like, you know, that this is sort of just what I wanted to do in the moment. You know, I don't think all of the motivation was just like to fill up a gap of self-worth or anything like that, like to not make it sound like so sad. But I think more so that I just really loved it, and I really thought that like I could, you know, I had the time and I wanted to really try to put the time to do something well and do it. And I think that, you know, there was a little bit of pressure, you know, on the back end being like, this is the one thing sort of like I can control in my life, you know, at the moment, as like, you know, things were kind of like rocky with my past startup job, and then also, you know, with my family and stuff like that, and like just kind of like adjusting to the move. And, you know, so there was a lot of comfort from like being able to just like, you know, kind of forget all about that and just like focus on Melee and the game. And sort of when I took a step back to take care of myself when I got really depressed and stuff like that, I sort of realized that I really wanted to put what I was doing in Melee and get more out of it than just this sort of, you know, very loving, supporting niche community. You know, like, you know, it's very easy, I think, to not very easy, but, you know, it's with these sort of small communities, I feel like you have almost like this alter ego, right? You can be like a rock star in, I mean, J-Mook's a great example, absolute rock star, you know, for the longest time in the community, everyone's talking about him, just like worked at Starbucks, right? Axe, like Walgreens Drake, it's sort of a similar thing. And kind of as I started thinking more, having to think more about, okay, how do I actively take care of myself during like a very tough time in my life, I kind of realized I wanted to get a little bit more out of it. You know, like part of the cards thing was me also, you know, really liking like, you know, the idea of like flipping and selling stuff and some business sort of things and making a little extra money on the side, you know. And so it was nice to be able to like do that. And like, you know, I've definitely like put a lot in, but I've also like, you know, had a few really good, honestly, really good sales that were like, you know, 5x or 7x like what I got thing for, and it's really nice. And I think I've definitely gotten like, you know, more, I think like like a little cocky, I would say. Like I wouldn't say like it in a bad way, but just more confident with myself and not having to necessarily like hide behind, I guess, like all of the, like I know that I put in the work, but I feel like I can be more just upfront about like, yeah, I put in this work, so like, yeah, I can sell it for like 5x because that's what people agree it, you know, it for and stuff like that. So that's sort of my long-winded answer to your question.
Every answer I have is long-winded. What are you talking about? I thought of something, and I want to kind of bring this to you a little bit, Jesse, because this feels a bit like an interview for my taste. I'm curious, what motivates you to do the podcast? Like, obviously you love it. Obviously this isn't something that is painful to show up and do, because enough of putting the podcast together, speaking from experience, it's the pain because it's the joy. It's not all business. It's a lot of fun. But besides the enjoyment of it, when things are difficult, when, you know, momentum takes you away, or when your family, you know, requires extra time for a period, and then it's okay, let's go back to you know, getting on the mic and putting stuff out. Kind of what's your source of motivation? What gets you back?
The game and the community in different ways will bring me back. Usually I would say that I've almost built up interest of being involved in Melee over the years of not being involved in Melee. I often wonder how much I would want to be doing stuff like this if I had actually tried entering tournaments back in 2008, when I was looking around at these videos of Mewtwo King versus Mango, or Mango versus Armada a few years later for stuff like Genesis. I would see those kind of videos on and off, and I would say I really want to, like, I want to play in a tournament setting. I would love to do that, but I never did. So when my first tournament ended up not being in 2008 or something like that, but rather 2021, last year, 2021, however you want to pronounce it, it was a long time coming. And so it's almost as if I had all of this energy for the game that just is there. So the best way for me to describe it other than that is what continues to keep me going if I'm really busy at work, or family stuff is busy, or if I look around and go, hold on, I've been podcasting about this game for a couple of weeks, but I actually haven't touched the game itself. I do feel as if talking to people about it keeps me interested in the game. So I have a guest on nearly every single episode. So when I come out of it, I go, this was good. I want to keep doing this. I have had very few interviews where I feel something slightly less than that, but I've never had a time recording this podcast where I said, this sucked. I would really rather not do this again. Even after the ones that were they did not go well. Something that you said earlier, JD, about being more intuitive. I over-prepared for a certain interview where afterwards I was like, oh, I'm such an idiot, but I want to do it again so that I can not over-prepare next time. Next time I get like a big fish on, I need to not spend hours and hours in writing down copious amount of notes. I cannot do that again because I just ruined it. I ruined it because I did all that extra work. So I would say, lastly, Jen, my lovely wife Jen, she supports me, not to say that she wants me to spend all of my available time doing this, right? But she has said, it's really cool that you have this thing. This is your thing. She could not care any less about Melee. Her eyes start to glaze over if I even try to talk to her about any of this stuff. And
same.
And so I feel empowered to be able to continue to do all this because she's giving me a lot of support in the behind the scenes.
It's amazing. Sorry, now I took the reins as host. Will, how do you feel about that?
This is your show while you guys are both here. That's I should have maybe said that a little bit more plainly earlier, but I was hoping this would happen, that somebody would just go, I like leading conversations too.
Yeah, I mean, that's super sick. What are you gonna say, JD?
No, we've been doing it for a minute. I think similarly, like, we're kind of pent up. I actually took a stab at podcasting for I literally did 2 of them, and they were god awful. They're unreleased. Mostly they're bad in terms of the quality. I think if I had a good setup, I think I had some fun things I was working with, and I tried, but it was through, like, it was a sales perspective, and it was supposed to be like half like serious work related things and then half, messing around and playing silly games. And I think the medium is something that I'm still such an advocate for. And I was thinking along the same lines, to tie it to Melee, of course, when listening to Will talk about, like, is he going to practice, and thinking about the practice. And I've had similar thoughts when I'm like, I want to go to a tournament, but how much do I want to prepare for it? It's, when the inertia stops and you're out of it, and it's time to, like, all right, let's put some plans together and let's get back into it. It's a huge, mental hurdle. It's we've built this snowball, and in our minds, it's nothing crazy, but you think about all the history we have, maybe baggage, maybe a lot of that is, I think of the early days of a podcast when I was downstairs in my mom's basement, and Ashley was, like, in the corner trying to hide behind the camera, and I was sweaty, and after the fact I learned there was mold down there, and I really enjoyed the idea of doing something and making it, and we had some years where it was just easy. And then near the end, when, like, we were doing these new projects and the big one, and we were burnt out, and then all this shit happened. Excuse my French. And
you can curse as much as you like, JD.
Hot damn. So, we have this kind of image, or at least I do, of what this podcast is, and kind of putting the pieces together to make it happen. It's not just because, we know what it takes to physically sit down, press record, little edits, release. We know what that is, but really it's not. It's a huge undertaking. It's sitting in front of the CRT and getting your gallant back up to where it was. It's not just doing the thing. It's understanding that you are going to be back into it, and it's going to be blank. And filling in that blank is what anxiety is, and it's honestly, it's just a hurdle that once you kind of shine a light on it, it's almost nothing. Easier said than done. That's why I'm grateful to be here and kind of just get the air out and be like, oh, this is enjoyable. This is intrinsically good for me. And that's difficult to kind of put a pin on in any sort of way and hand off. But, like, basically all I'm trying to say is, like, Cypher, what you got here is great, and the less you anticipate into the future, and the less you kind of expect out of it, and really just stay with what you enjoy with it, and just doing the steps and having the thing and enjoying the process, like, it's something that could use endless reminders. Like, don't worry about what it could be. Don't worry about where you're going. I know the whole name implies a journey to a peak. Forget that. It's the way you're doing it, preparing, not preparing, learning, making mistakes. Just the way you're doing it's great. And again, like, this sounds like I'm wrapping up the episode. I'm really not trying to, but yeah, 200 episodes ain't nothing, man. That's really great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's you were saying something that I felt, okay, Wasabi, you could probably speak to this as well. How fun is it to go and talk somewhere knowing that you're going to be put out there to the world and you don't have to edit it or push it out yourself? That's super fun.
Way better.
Oh, it's so fun.
It's so much nicer. It's so much nicer. Yeah. I mean, I think the interesting thing I'm curious is like, you know, obviously I know you wanted us to join for the 200th episode since, you know, you joined the Wannabes and that's sort of, you know, as you said in the beginning, you know, help kick it off. But I'm just curious on like, you know, how you're feeling like as this is kind of going on, because, you know, it's been a while. Like JD and I, like, the funny thing is like JD and I like caught up maybe like once before this, and that was like back in like June, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not like we we haven't even like, you know, kept up with like, you know, messages or anything, you know. So this is almost very, you know, surreal for me. So I'm curious about your, you know, how you're feeling about it, and you know, you too, JD.
Oh, I'm feeling super happy to have you both here. JD, how do you feel? Because part of this, I have friends who are IRL friends who I say, we should catch up more. And they say, yeah. And then we don't speak for 3 months. But then I say at the end of 3 months, or they say at the end of 3 months, we should catch up. And then we do. And we say, this is great. And then we don't. And I'm sorry to hear somewhat. I guess it's healthy also to pursue other friendships at different times of life. And you two have that thing where you can reconnect and it's all good. But JD, how does it feel for you?
I mean, fantastic. I think, you know, I think Will knows what my energy levels look like. I think he could probably tell that I'm in a good mood, and it's not just the shirt. Yeah. But it is pretty surreal. It's
the hair too.
Thank you. I've been waiting for someone.
Yeah,
beautiful hair.
I know. I just had to throw it in.
I've been using Keeps. I spotted a little bald spot. I'm like, oh, hot damn! I need to get on this this hair product ASAP. Doesn't thicken very well, but we're still early.
Well, also no free ads, so it doesn't thicken well for those of you who are looking to tear that apart a little bit.
You should blank it out. Go back and take out the product placement shenanigans. It definitely, I think surreal's funny. Is a funny way to look at it. It's kind of true. Like, I haven't recorded in this apartment, like straight up, and I've been here for a long time, since November. And you know, it's sort of just a, like, I'm coming up on a year of my new job, which has been its own journey. It's sort of this, like, you don't realize you're in a certain phase of your life until you just, oh, that was 8 months ago. Oh, that was a year ago. Like, it sneaks up on you. And I think it's kind of a testament to like what Will and I have worked. I hesitate to say worked, but kind of like what we communicated back and forth and kind of developed as what a healthy mindset is, which is like, it felt okay to just to let it go and let it be what it was and trust that it probably would come back. And if it didn't, that's also okay. It was really just like, you know, we had this like firm grip on what the podcast was, because we were showing up weekly and we were doing it and scheduling around it and, you know, communicating and all that. And then letting go felt so counterintuitive, but you know, it almost wasn't up to us. It was just like, it was like, what would it even look like to force this right now? Like, what even are we doing here? And then kind of seeing that we come out the other side with plenty to work on, plenty to feel inspired by, and to impress ourselves with outside of, you know, what we do in the podcast, and have those moments. And you know, I probably could have stepped up the therapy game, because the Wannabes was essentially like a quarter of a therapy session every time. But you know, there was still so much out there that it kind of let it, I don't know, it almost gave it, my mind goes to a metaphor of a lotus flower. I think it's a lotus, where you can overwater it so easily and kill it. It is very simple to overwater a lotus. It's a specific thing. And when it's out of the water is when it can bloom, right? It's sort of just like what it is beautiful. Maybe we plant another one, maybe not. And maybe this metaphor is completely shoehorned, but you know, did I answer any question at all? I doubt it.
No, I think it did. I mean, like, you know, I think that it's really interesting that analogy where, you know, I think that we both felt like it was like we wanted to work on different things, and it was just sort of like, you know, we wanted to in some ways, and we you know, we were forced to in another way, you know, and that's really what sort of started the hiatus. I think, like, looking back, like, it's really interesting because I feel like, you know, nothing's really changed in terms of like what we were doing, like what we want, you know, or anything. I think it was just like it just went into like different areas, and you know, we're still trying to find the pieces. But you know, something I think about a lot is just how all encompassing Melee was for like everything. And so part of reconstructing, you know, post Melee is that like sort of this realization that nothing really kind of encompasses everything like Melee did. And so you kind of have to take it in more like piecemeal stuff, which is, I think, really interesting. And honestly, why, like, I'll say for myself, like, it's, you know, I haven't hit back about the, you know, restarting the Wannabes and stuff like that, just because I think that, like, I you know, where does it fit in this whole reconstructing what, you know, everything Melee sort of filled. And I think that's like, you know, why we're all addicted to this game, you know, or the community or whatever, is it's been really interesting trying to reconstruct that. And I still haven't figured out where the podcast sort of goes with that, because it's just tough with, you know, honestly, being on the West Coast. I think it would be completely different if it was on the East Coast as well.
Totally.
Okay, so we all know JD's contemporary. We're talking about Ludwig, you know, just roughly same level in terms of clout, skill, presence on the camera, all that stuff. Anyway,
only 3 of those things are true.
So they recently started, I guess it's already been a year since they started the Yard podcast, but I was thinking about how, Wassabi, you were saying how Melee's all encompassing. I think about listening to the Yard, and every single episode they mention something related to Melee. They just can't help it. And when you're in the sauce, you can't get away. There's nothing about the Yard that suggests this is supposed to be a Melee related podcast, but every single episode, Mango comes up, or somebody from the community comes up, or they talk about playing on unranked. Like Aiden was recently, or it was Nick, one of the two were recently complaining. No, it was Aiden recently complaining about playing Secrets, and Secrets, the Fox player, if I recall correctly, BMing Aiden on unranked, and Aiden going, "That's ridiculous." And they're talking about this on the Yard, which is not a Melee podcast, but it makes it a Melee podcast in my mind. It's the most popular Melee podcast you could say out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, like, that whole circle, it's really interesting. I actually met a friend of a friend who's really cool, just moved to Oakland on Saturday, or I met them on Saturday. They recently, like a few weeks ago, moved to Oakland, and they didn't know anything was actually Jmook. With Jmook being, you know, the hotness, you know, lately, and Aatrox also being a Sheik player, was very surreal and weird to hear at like this random minor league soccer game with friends. Like, oh yeah, like the only player I know is like Jmook. You know, not Mango, not Zay, not M2K, but Jmook.
Let's go. What do you all think about Jmook finally taking over the world? Because I did not know, I don't know Jmook, I don't know Jake. I just listened to a Wannabes episode, and as soon as I saw him play in an online tournament last year, was like, get Jmook to an IRL tournament. When IRL tournaments came back, and we all had to wait until Genesis 8, where he placed second, no big deal. Actually, Wassabi, you entered Genesis 8, if I recall correctly. You should talk about that while you crack at this answer first. You know Jmook, so talk about Genesis 8 a little bit, and also about Jmook from whatever perspective you want to.
Yeah, okay. So Genesis 8, from my perspective quickly, was really fun. It was great seeing everyone, but also it was really interesting competing because I like totally forgot how to like play certain matchups and I had to like kind of do things on the fly and improvise, which is normally not my forte.
Hell yeah.
I remember one time just was like, oh yeah, like I totally forgot how to play against Falcon, one of my more common matchups in like early round 2, and so I like barely took game 2 and then like was just like I need to do something to like kind of like shake things up, and so I just like popped off mid set, and I think I've definitely allowed myself to be a little more egotistical and feeling myself more, and that kind of got the jitters out, and I think I got 65th.
Yeah, you
I
did.
barely lost to
Wow.
I lost to Magi, that was rough, and then I lost to Azel, which I'm a little bit more tight on because I was actually up like both games, but he was more practiced. So I think under the pressure, I definitely caved, and so that wasn't like undeserving or anything. I think it was just more of like I was pretty happy, but I wish I could have clutched against Azel at the very least.
And top 64 at Genesis 8, that's a big deal, Wassabi.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy with it.
Sick losses.
I had such a brutal Magi to Azel.
Yeah, that's a tough combo.
Yeah. I think in terms of Jmook 1, I like lost my voice cheering for him. You can see me in when he beats Plup, I like run from the back of the crowd to pop off with him. A very classic thing.
Let's go.
Actually, a few people reach out to me like because they're like, "Hey, I think I saw you on stream. Like, how have you been?" I think I'm so happy for Jake. I think like it's one of those things where I look more at what Melee, has done and can do for people's lives, and I think like the big thing I think about is like there is like just like this very big threshold between being really good at the game and like top 30 and everything and being able to like sustain a life from it. And I think that gap's a really tough gap to make because like as you're approaching it, and there are players that come to mind but I won't say is like I look at them and they're performing really well in bracket, but you can tell like how much pressure is on them, how critical they are of themselves, to a detrimental state because it's so much pressure, to like do it. And it doesn't Melee both gives you a lot back in terms of like, I think emotion and community and love and fulfillment and all of that. But in, as you're getting older, it's tough, as you have to pay bills and, worry about a job and and all of that stuff. Nothing with reaction speed, to be very fair. But I think Jake, it was so happy to see him sort of like almost skip that, and just instantly, doing that into being the hotness into then getting sponsored and like being able to like commit a full life for something that, he has continued to stay in love with for so long. And I think that's what makes me the most happy about seeing Jake, continuing to rise up. It's really just the fact that he like stayed so, as talented as he is, I think the biggest talent is that he loves the game, and it shows like how much he loves the game for how, diligent and played in a way that kept him having fun with the game for so long in such a smaller region as upstate New York and rural sort of area, and I mean, JD can say a lot about that area, having kind of went to college there, but I think seeing him sort of skip the step of like, do I kind of try to jump over this cliff to try to make it so that I can both play Melee and sustain like a, proper life and not have sort of as many worries, I think is the biggest thing that I'm most happy about.
Whew. Should I jump in here? Clearly,
I will. Thoughts. Yeah, let me say one last thing is I pretty much at this point only like check a tournament in when I see a Jmook run. So he's probably like the only player that like I'll like check in on at this point because it's just was super sick seeing him at Genesis and all the matches afterwards.
Yeah, I the other day I'm like, Hey guys, how did the rest of the bracket go? Because usually I check from the top down until I get to JMOOC, so I've been missing out on a lot of what's been going on. This takes me back to when we were recording more, and Will would just nail an answer so eloquently that I'm just like digging for new angles on it that wouldn't just like repeat or just say things but worse. Yeah, I think so. That was back in June, right? When Genesis, that was his first big tournament.
January, but yeah.
Well, no. January got delayed to April.
Oh, April. It was April. It was April.
Yeah.
Right.
Since then, every once a month ish, there's a new tournament where JMOOC places top 3, almost wins, that kind of deal.
Yeah, it happens like once a month. Like Summit.
It's crazy.
The one where HBox threw a chair.
Yeah, Wave Dash, and then most recently Shine. Yep. Actually, Shine would have been a great losers run. He got put into losers outside of top 8 by Axe, and then drilled through all these players to get back up to grand finals, including 3-0ing HBox. That was a really fun, like just fun watching him go through that big losers run. And I'm such a shame he did beat Zane, but that's okay because I really like Zane too. I'll let you go, JD.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're still waiting on that dub. And I mean, coming out of nowhere and being the second place champion and still like having that underdog it's almost like the best way to enter into the pro scene is to, because it's almost like, remember when Zane started winning, it's like, oh, this is so sick. Oh, Zane's winning. And he had a bit of a slower climb up. Like he kind of, went through the paces for sure. But then Zane started winning, and then only Zane was winning. You're like, all right, like, let's get, and then you started rooting against them, and no one in the right mind would root against Jake right now. So kind of ideal way to start getting sponsored and getting your name out there. Yeah, a lot of thoughts. I mean, not to brag, but I'm in a close-knit Discord with like 10 people, and Jake's just in there streaming to like 3 of us sometimes. It's just like, what's up, man? Oh, hey, how you do? You want to play? That's how much he loves the game. He wants to play with me. You know what I mean? Like, this guy, I think he has 2 huge talents, which I kind of want to touch on. But one of his talents is he's just got gamer blood. I think a lot of us have gamer blood. That's not enough. But his other talent is that he's just like insatiable about the game. Like he really just has the mechanisms in his brain where it kind of fits joyously, and he just will do it constantly. And for whatever reason, parenting, or maybe he took a good physical education class in high school, great posture, great hand health. He understood early. He developed good habits early on, maybe by virtue of when he started playing, which was like 2014, when like that it kind of was the hotness right at like a year after the documentary. Hand health was like a thing. So I don't know. There's a whole bunch of circumstances, many of them in his control, that he has worked hard to do. But I think there's a lot of lessons to be derived, almost as a warning, and not to bring it into a harbinger of like the dangers of Melee, but you got to realize that Jake's story is incredibly uncommon, and clearly he's a what's the word for it? An anomaly. Clearly he's coming in as a phenomenal player, and being secretive for 8 years while playing, and everyone thinks you just started yesterday because you look young. Like, that doesn't exist because of Slip anymore. Like, it's just the timing and the circumstances of him probably won't happen again. And I think a lot of people are going to think it could happen to them. And that's a little scary, because, and maybe I'm just kind of projecting. Maybe I'm kind of bringing myself back to when Will and I were really talking about like how to balance Melee. And if we had one message to get out to the community, it was how to transition, how to have an exit ramp, how to be an adult and keep the game. And when Will said like he kind of skipped it, kind of true. I mean, like he really like did a lot of things right, but he's a pro gamer now. He didn't really go to tournaments and like budget around traveling and spend all this time at weeklies and have to make difficult choices about how he lives his life and how he builds a career, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's it's really easy to be happy for him, and I am. This isn't about Jmook, really. It's about the story of Jmook. It's about people outside of Jake looking at him. I get a little concerned. I see a generation of people looking at Melee, rightfully so, as an all or nothing endeavor and choosing all. And that is a hard life if you're not like the Bernie Sanders, the 1% of the 1%. You know what I mean? Like, it just is. It's really fun. There's so much to get out of it. I think the bigger lesson would be Jake talking about like year 3 of when he started coming up in upstate, when he got so much joy, not to brag again, but when I was like a year and a half his senior, and like at the point where he was getting, like, he caught up to me and we were equally balanced and we were playing just incredible friendlies, and for no stake, I think it was literally $1 money match. And that was everything for us, for both of us. He was 16, I was like 20 or whatever, but that is what the lesson should be, is like, how much did he enjoy coming up? How much did he enjoy discovering all of his talents, all of the community, all of his best friends, this tight-knit Discord that's going to be buddies forever, regardless of Melee. Like, that's the important thing. And it's just, again, not to be a negative Nancy here. I'm looking for things Will didn't mention. And go back to Will's answer if you're trying to end on a high note. But I really feel strongly about that. Like, things are going great for him, and there will never be anyone like him ever again. I truly believe that.
Well, if I want this game to be alive for years and years to come, the idea of there being another Jmook, it is very unlikely, but I will not say never for myself. I'm excited to see who among all the people who have gotten into Melee within the past 24 months end up being the kind of player that can push for a top 10 player spot. But the reality, like you were saying, is that there will be hundreds or thousands, tens of thousands, who knows, of Melee players who are saying, I love this game, and they'll play for 2 months straight, and then they'll either graduate high school or graduate college and go, okay, I just can't, I don't have time for it anymore, because now life is starting to demand things of me, bills, relationships, jobs, life, all that stuff. And to give a cautionary tale to someone who's starting out in Melee is definitely a good thing, because you want them to understand that in order to get to a spot that we all see Mango, Jmook, Zane, Hungrybox, and we don't necessarily appreciate 8 years. Most people who are younger than 25 can't think about what 8 years in the future means to them. They can't think about that at all. But you have to acknowledge that in order to be a top player in Melee, you generally speaking have to put at minimum 4 years. Because I think Zane played for about 4 years before starting to knock off top players. I think it took at least 4 years for him to start doing that. And Zane, other than Jmook, rose pretty quickly through the ranks, to give Zane credit. It's not like it took him 10 years to figure out the game. But
I will say, like, Cody probably, I think, would be the shortest. I think Cody was like 3 years.
Yeah. But
I think, obviously there's a cautionary tale with it, and I totally agree with JD on that. I think that, one thing I'd highlight, just knowing Jmook a little bit more intimately, is like, he purposely made decisions that he waited as well, you know, like, in terms of he made decisions that were best, I guess, how do I phrase it, he, the decisions that he made wasn't always all about Melee. It was about supporting a friend, or it was about doing his love, things for around his love for music and sort of stuff like that. So he could sort of wait for his shot, even if he, I think he could have stepped on the gas, anytime he wanted. And it's ridiculous to say that what made him kind of really do it was a second place Cinderella run at a super major into beating the best player in the world at a invitational, to do it. But I think a lot of people step on the gas and try to do it faster, but sacrifice sort of the stability that you sort of need for the long run. You know, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I think that it's really interesting to say, because I think that like Melee can be for kind of anyone, but I've definitely also seen the other side of it, you know, the more dangerous side, as JD said, where, you know, people really struggle with, you know, balancing, you know, achieving that dream and also being able to like live in this sort of, you know, world capitalistic society, however you kind of want to like put it, right? And I think that's sort of the tough bit, because it takes away from the love of the game. Like, I think the best thing to happen to Jmook is that, you know, him being able to skip that made it so that he just like was able to continue loving the game more than anything else.
Yeah, he picked his spot. Like, not just picked the spots, he picked his spot.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been like when he 3-0'd, you know, La Luna. It could have been when he lost Game 5 to Triff. It could have been when he lost Game 5 to Fiction. It could have been when he beat Cody. You know, it could have been like, or when he beats Toussaint. It could have been any point of that time where he's like, I'm gonna try it now.
Well,
you know?
Those were upstate tournaments. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I think making the most of what he had was another one of his, maybe talents, maybe again upbringing. I don't know what circumstance led to him being really, I think,
grounded. You know,
great word for it. Way better than what I was going to say. I love that, and it's totally kind of. He looks like a lightning rod, doesn't he? He's always grounded. I think a kind of like. I don't know how I'd compare the two, but my mind kept going to Lod in this conversation.
Lod's a great example, yeah.
And almost the best example, where it's like you can be a doctor, like you can, and be a top. What is he? 15,
top 10, he's ranked 8 over the summer.
10. Yeah.
And so at what point? I'm sure there were points where like Lod had to be like, okay, I might lose a bit of sleep over this. There might be some, you know, maybe he spent a little too much time gaming when he should have been studying. Like, I'm sure there were times where there were sacrifices, one for the other, most likely for the love of the game, rather than a deep-seated like drive to be the number 8 player in 2022. So I really think it's a lot of this conversation, and I don't know why my brain went to such a dark place when I'm so happy for Jmook. I think it's just like the counterbalance is important, and looking at the wide landscape of Melee players that, like, look, me and Will like are nice on the sticks. Like, I've gotten to the point where when people bring up Melee, I stop being like, oh, you know, I'm kind of good, like I'm not as good as blah, blah, blah. Like, if you're outside the game, I'm like, yo, I would mess you up. And I'm just confident about that. In perpetuity, I will always be nice on the sticks, and it will always be really fun. I'll always go to a tournament and be able to be a threat, whatever. That is honestly such a... It's great that is an option. It's great that is a way to enjoy the game. And it's also great that the game will allow you to skyrocket if circumstances allow, and there won't be another Jake, but there will be players that start when they're 13, and then by the time they're 17, you know, start winning majors. I'm sure that will exist, and everything in between. And I guess you don't have to be the top 10 player to be happy. That's all I care about. I just want people to look at their own journeys, their own experience with the game, and find happiness, not necessarily success, you know?
Once you actually research or see the full Jmook story, I think there are definitely people who just know that he came out of nowhere and might not necessarily know that he played for so long on and off, or would actually, in fact, beat top players or high level players coming into the upstate New York region and pulling off upsets or driving the game 5, all that stuff. You wouldn't know unless you did the research, but hopefully people who really like Jmook have realized by now all the work that Jmook put in to get better at the game, but also to continue to take care of everything else in life, to have that balance be optimal. It in a very, very, very loose way. It reminds me I took like a I took the advice of, if I had spoken to Jay Mook in 2014 and said I should really get into it now, if I had spoken to him about it at that time when he's just getting in, I wonder if it would have been me again saying, I don't know, I should probably do other things. I need to get my life in order, that sort of thing. If he would have said, but you can still play the game. You can still play the game. You don't have to totally abandon Melee in order to take care of yourself. You can still have a balance where you don't put pressure on yourself to be better by the next day, or to play Mango and win by the next day. You just play when you can and practice when you can, and the rest will sort itself out, because that would have been fun advice to hear at that time. I always wonder about what would have been if I had started playing earlier. How good could I possibly be by now? But that doesn't matter. I've had so many other blessings in my life that are outside of Melee, and I'm really lucky. I'm really, really lucky. So now I get to kind of play around with Melee on the side in the past year or so. That's been a big blessing.
Love that. Totally true, man.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
We are getting to the point, though, where, as per the normal Wassabi and JD Wannabe style, about an hour, and we're actually over an hour, is about the time where we're starting to go, ooh, other things. Time to get back to the life that we keep all saying we actually do have, everybody. So I have so many more things I would love to talk to y'all about, but we should wrap here. I don't have any Patreon questions for this evening, so I'll go ahead and let each of you do plugs and shout outs, if you will. We'll start with you, Wassabi. Any final thoughts that you have, as well as where the people can find you?
Yeah, I mean, people can find me at on Twitter at Wasabi, though I'm not on it too often right now or anything like that. And I do have like a card IG that I use, Wassabi Trading, but that's sort of strictly just cards, just how like Twitter was for the most part strictly for Melee. But I think I've just been thinking about like this has just been super fun and definitely super energizing, as JD predicted, as always. I think that like sort of what I'm kind of leaving, that's kind of the last thought I sort of have, is that like, funny enough, we've talked about Jake, we've talked about so many things, we've caught up. And I think that in terms of like, when I think about like Melee and, why I, haven't really focused on it a lot or anything like that. Like, I think the one thing I would just add is that like, I sort of, as I've sort of gotten, done more work with myself and like become more confident and shored up my self-worth and all of that, I kind of realized like I always want to like be able to do something big, and this isn't like a like dig at the community or something like that. It was just more of like I felt like I wanted to do it on a bigger scale than just the Melee community. Like part of me doing cards is like I'm just honestly having fun, like just improving my I guess like financial, what's the word for it? Financial assets, financial sort of situation. That's the word for it. And being able to do something fun, but yet still it translating to something that, is part of sort of everyday life. And I felt like Melee was, I didn't want to be just siloed at like doing that just within the Melee community. So I think, looking back at it, and this, has become a very long-winded thing as always. Yeah, like I think that nothing's really changed in terms of like sort of my drive. It just sort of, moved eventually outside of Melee. And I think that like a lot of top players, are top players, not necessarily because they have gamer genes or anything like that, but I think it's just that their devotion and love for Melee always stays within Melee. And I think that's why they're top players.
So good. I missed you, man.
I miss you too, man.
So I have a couple things to leave on. You can't find me anywhere. I have Instagram, I have Twitter. Good luck. I'll send it to you. It could be in the description or something.
There we go.
I think I can make an announcement right now. Will and I have not talked about this, but
go for it.
If this is a conditional, if the Wannabes were to return, it will not be a Melee podcast. It will live in its DNA. But I'm so with you that I'm tired of drumming up topics about the game. I'm over it. I'm done gunning to compete. I know in my brain, probably in like 2024, when like, you know, the wedding's over and, you know, I've found comfort in my sales role, and I'm like, let me go to 3 majors and see what happens. that timeline exists, right? But I want these conversations to really live more in the what am I doing here? Like, what are we aiming for? How do you feel? And then just like begrudgingly be like, dude, the only metaphor is a Melee metaphor. Like I think that's the ideal Wannabes podcast. And so we're going to find time to talk, because this was just like,
yeah, we'll find time for sure.
This was so much what I wanted to be. So with that out of the way, I think parting thoughts are, any effort you put into something is worth it. And that's been told many different ways. It's been like, you know, don't be afraid to fail. And there's plenty of cliches out of that. But my mind always goes to, you know, when I exercise for 2 days and then give up, or when I, you know, practice for an hour and then don't practice for another week. Like, so much of my life, so much of the beginnings of this past year, when we weren't doing the podcast, when I wasn't practicing anything like that, was just, you know, regretful of the time I'm not doing the thing. And once I became grateful of the time I did do the thing and realized how much I gained out of it, regardless of if I'm doing it this very moment, it really began a shift. So yeah, if we return and we do season 4 and there's 3 episodes and we're like, wait, I don't want to do this anymore, it's still positive, still a good thing. And I don't know, that's what I want to keep in my own brain, so I can live my best life and follow my own advice.
I know how competitive both of you can be in your own way. There were episodes I remember listening to where I'm hearing ambition, goals, and saying to myself, it's so cool to set out something to shoot for. And even if that doesn't actually end up turning out, it's something that I don't usually do, where I say to myself out loud, these are my goals. Like with the podcast, I don't think goals, because I think I already follow the advice that you said to me earlier, JD, which was to not put expectations on what happens in the future. Like, by this time, be this big, by this time, have that many audiences or invites to this, whatever. Little things are trickling in here and there every now and again where I go, oh, this is gravy. I get to do a little bit of extra stuff related to Melee. So that's cool. So I hope to continue to stay that way. As for you all with the Wannabes, what I'm looking forward to is hearing the both of you talk, because I think I always enjoyed that more than how you would talk about Melee. I always just enjoyed hearing you both talk about your experiences separately from each other and also with each other, because it's a real friendship that's there. I love that there's still sparks to do that. And I will, as your as someone who has now, I think, officially produced more episodes than the Wannabes has, please continue to remember that when you are recording and feeling, yes, this is it, this is the thing, let's do this like tomorrow night too, or let's do this for the next 2 months every night at this exact time in this exact place, that we're all, as the audience, going to be super happy to have whatever we end up seeing actually come out into the world from you two. So even if it is just 3 JD, you know that you'll have at least one person who's super, super excited that happened. And I'm looking forward to seeing whatever y'all decide to do with the Wannabes again.
Damn, you had to flex on us right at the end, huh?
Mm-hmm. Well, see, I tried really hard, but then I thought, wait, I have a natural way to do this, and to be selfish.
No, already. I think. Oh, if the math checks out, this. Yeah,
JD, I was trying to give you credit with Garlic and Salt, with your other projects. You've done more than just Wannabes. You've done other stuff related to podcasting as well.
Sure, and if we count all the stuff I didn't release, I'm winning, son.
Yes, there we go. And don't forget, I have done, and I've always gone out of my way to give you all credit. You know that, JD. You know that I really appreciate you.
You're the man, dude. I'm giving you crap because I love you. This is
this has been so fun. And congrats again on 200. I think to end on something, because I know JD was talking about it. I think like it's also like, at least I can speak from personal experience, like it's okay to also just like regret, also coming short on it. Like there part of me like was like, like, oh man, like I think part of the regret is just like how much it did mean to you. Like honestly, when I like stopped playing Melee, it was like I would talk about it as if I like lost a best friend. Honestly, I would be like, like I was like actually like in mourning for a very long time about it, but I think that like looking out of it now, I think that like the things you do in Melee, and what I like that you said is like it just always pays off. You just don't know whether it's going to be in the game or somewhere else.
Cut it there.
And we have to also congratulate JD on engagement. It's just like congratulations on that. That was,
we set a date. We have a date.
That's awesome.
May 3rd, 2023. No one is invited. We're eloping in Italy. Ba-boom.
When's the wedding Melee tournament? I'll practice for that.
I'll make sure it happens, man. That actually sounds kind of fun. Shoot, ate it.
Sounds good. Yeah.
More like a divorce party.
No, don't do that already to me, my heart. Okay, congratulations, JD and Wassabi. Congratulations on the you got a cat within the past year. I've seen pictures.
Yeah, we got 2 cats.
Yes,
there's one right now, right there.
Oh. See,
we have 2 cats.
You can win outside of Melee. Just imagine that, all the Melee fans out there. So yes, for those of you who are curious, there are many episodes of the Wannabes where you can follow along with a journey that has now officially been preserved and is always going to be there unless JD rage quits and deletes all the episodes. Don't do that.
It's a possibility. I wouldn't be surprised if you told me.
Sorry, I rage quit. I had to delete all of them.
Don't do it, JD. Anyway, you can listen to the Wannabes as they were at a time. Beautiful thumbnails on YouTube as well. And then look forward to the possible return. We shall see. And there's also a Wannabes Discord, all that fun stuff. You can check them out wherever the links that in the description of the podcast take you, whatever ends up being there, follow along. And for me, yes, I'm very happy that I made it to 200 episodes. I didn't think to myself, just got to get there. I looked up and realized I was getting close, and there were a couple of different ideas that I had, but ultimately what excited me the most, it wasn't necessarily bringing on big fish or doing something extravagant or trying to do like an IRL podcast kind of thing. What excited me the most was thinking, wait a minute, I could casually just say, hey, JD, Wassabi, it's been a while, miss you all, I'm coming up on episode 200, it'd be super cool. I mean, and you both said yes. It just reminded me of when you both said, super cool, Jesse, if you want to do a podcast, you can do that. Not that you gave me permission, but you almost kind of did. Like, I just needed somebody to tell me to do it that was in the Melee scene, and I was like, so thank you for continuing to support me. I know that you don't listen often or whatever, but thank you for supporting me all the same. And to all the people who listen to the podcast, yay, thank you for supporting this. And I look forward to continuing to provide the content, if you will, or be around. Super cool to be able to go up to the big house. I should say this what's the word that I want, genuinely or as earnestly as I can. Going up to the big house this upcoming October, this is next month already, is possible because of everybody supporting me. So I want to say seriously thank you. So
that's amazing.
I'm very excited to show you the plans that I have for Big House, and also to meet some or all of you there. I know Big House is one where a lot of people go, so I know that I'm going to be meeting Contra up there. I'm going to be meeting more members of the Melee Stats people up there, and so many Midwest homies, people like JDMH, and hopefully I'll see some Canada people. I don't know if people like Petra or Legs will be going, but just like in general, and I'll meet Turn Down for Walt for the first time. Walt's been on the show a couple of times, and I'll actually meet Walt in person. We're gonna shout morning to each other, hopefully Friday morning, Saturday morning, and Sunday morning. I'll just yell from across the venue. That's the goal.
Specific plan.
Yes, it's a thing in the Turn Down for Walt Discord. You should check that out also. All right, but that's me. So thank you all once again for joining, JD, Wassabi, and for everyone listening along. I appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
Peace, everyone.
So now that we are done with the official recording, we need thumbnail poses. Well, just one.